Take a journey with me to explore other people's lives and their experiences. Let's allow that information to take us on a journey of questioning and self-reflection that can lead us to live our most passionate and joyful life. Let's take a journey now. Hello and welcome to Journey for Truth on webtalkradio.net. I am Tammy Urbanic, your host. Thank you so much for joining me. Mark your calendars. February 7th, 8th, and 9th, 2014 is the next Jonah Intensive in Denver, Colorado. At these intensives, you learn about the spirituality of science and the science of spirituality. In 2.5 days, you learn a wealth of knowledge on a very particular topic. This February topic is going to be on chemical markers. The wording is actually a little different in some of the research if you look that up, but chemical markers that will be utilized in vaccines very, very soon, including the flu shot coming this next fall. And what we can do to really protect ourselves from those toxins, and what is the purpose of those chemical markers, and what we can do to improve our quality of life. February 7th, 8th, and 9th. And you can go to JonahLifeInstitute.com to find more information on that. My guest this week is A.K. Kuykendall, the author of Conspirator's Odyssey. A.K. uses fiction to write about real topics that affect us on some level. And the purpose of today's show is to really bring awareness and see how we can become more involved. A.K., welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us first a little bit about yourself and about your book.
About myself, I'm a corporate chef by trade. Currently traveling the 50 states, working with some restaurateurs, attempting to expand their mom and pop operations, or just know how to control food over base, as well as their labor costs all the way around. Pretty much, I focus on all the P&L opportunities within their institution or operation. But as a writer, which has always been a passion of mine, because I just consider myself like a rabid storyteller, I pretty much, I've always said to my staff or anyone I've ever been around, even my family included, that you never know when a story idea is going to turn into $1 million, so just stick with what you love. Now, I'm not degreed in anything having to do with literature, as I am as a corporate chef, but I just find it an avenue in order to express myself, sort of like Picasso and Da Vinci did in their day. Even though they put paint to a canvas, my canvas happens to be just a white sheet of paper.
Okay, well, your book is about conspiracy, and it's about JFK, and it's about UFOs. So what got you interested in writing about that?
Even though I was born 11 plus years past the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, his life and times have fascinated me, and he has become, he is my most favorite of presidents, based on his willingness to go against the grain of history, go against the grain of the status quo in our America. And when he tried to create social change for African Americans, women, and just the way that the trajectory of the way America was heading, he wanted to actually step in there and actually be the head of state and actually do well by we the people. So his life and times catapulted this. But in a nutshell, we've always, for over 50 years, we focused on the who, what, when, where, and how behind the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. But also for over 50 years, I've also noticed that no one's ever focused on the why. No one looks behind the curtain. And that's where my story pretty much comes in play. As my theories focus on the infamous Roswell UFO, 1947 Roswell UFO crash incident, and the military-industrial complex, which ultimately led to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, having everything to do with the Vietnam War.
Okay, so I do find that very interesting, because I have heard from another teacher that right before he was assassinated, he asked or rather, I guess, demanded documentation on UFOs and extraterrestrial activity. And so I find it interesting that you're making that connection in your book. So can you go into a little bit more detail about how those two are connected, the Roswell UFO crash and his assassination?
All right. Well, I can just put it this way. The connections between that, everything has to do with the military-industrial complex, which Dwight David Eisenhower spoke against in his a farewell address to the nation. He said, quote unquote, "Beware the military-industrial complex." Basically, what I allude to is based on the information I've gotten from my anonymous source, that the Presidential Book of Secrets is a real entity. It's a real book. It's something that presidents use to send a message, pretty much a clandestine message to the succeeding president that's coming into office, as well as learning certain secrets from other presidents as well, because they are bound under secret oaths and secret proceedings. They cannot go beyond that. See, that's why my theories that allude to presidents being selected, not elected, reigns true. But those connections had everything to do with experimentations. Take for instance, we the people have been funding wars. We the people, beyond our want or willingness, have been funding wars through our tax dollars. And we've learned that our tax dollars have been fleeced on numerous occasions, but the military seems to just continue to increase. Nothing can stop the evolution of our military-industrial complex. It just keeps growing. They put billions and billions of our tax dollars into perpetuating this war machine. But there's one weapon that our military-industrial complex has always been seeking, and that is the concept known as a super soldier. That's why you hear of concepts of like the Manchurian Candidate, which is nothing but an offshoot of MK Ultra dealing with mind control. Mm-hmm. So if you're creating something as broad and as big as the concept of a super soldier, you would need to, attach the concept of mind control, or these individuals would be like the Terminator and take over the planet. You know what I mean? So what happens is that this super soldier is meant not to have a wife, not to have children, not to have family. They just follow any and every order ever given. But when we have this all voluntary service, what are the caveats? We're dealing with emotion of I need to get back to my children, or I need to be back with my wife. Our finances up and down. Basically, I just don't feel good. Oh, I got hurt.
So are you saying that the super soldier then would lack a conscience?
Would lack a conscience. Specifically, would lack a conscience. The conscience would actually belong to the United States government, or our war machine known as the military-industrial complex.
I have seen, and I have had other guests on my show who have talked about something similar. You're talking about something a little bit more specific than some previous guests, but I have had a previous guest who talked about MK Ultra. I've looked into it. I've done some research on that, and it is a very sinister and scary part of our government that, according to our government, has been disbanded and no longer is active, which some people very much disagree with. That some people say it's still very much active. The government just says that back in the 1970s that it was so-called closed up. So anyone can Google MK Ultra and look into that and see that our own government even addressed it. So, when we're talking about these issues like UFOs and the Roswell crash and super soldier and MK Ultra mind control, these are not just some fantasy theories out there. We're talking about information that our government is aware of, and that some people within our population are aware of, but a lot of people aren't aware of it. So, a first question I want to bring up is, for me, it's obvious that being educated and knowing what's going on that knowledge allows us to make wise choices and to simply be aware. Is there something deeper there that you can add in terms of why is it important for us to know this type of information?
I call it something like self-preservation or just knowledge, because I'm rather pessimistic when it comes down to the trajectory of our human race. I'm very pessimistic, and that's why I approach my literature or I approach the people through a fact-based fiction perspective. I look at myself as being a member of a secret society. But the secret society has been doing this for a long time, preparing the masses. So, in a nutshell, I'm a member of a secret society, one that uses the concept of alternative history to slowly awaken the masses to the covert doings of individuals of this world and beyond. I feel it's a weapon, stronger than you may think, for one cannot save a world nestled in a box, strategically dormant to the realities of their existence. By exposing the masses to the idea of an alternative history, I feel it will help to soften the blow felt when the world's dirty laundry can no longer be contained. You can use examples like writers such as myself, producers, film directors, etc. have been doing this for years, preparing the masses for the inevitable. Think back to Rod Serling's 1959 to 1964 series, The Twilight Zone, or the Mercury Theater's October 30th, 1938 broadcast of the War of the Worlds over the Columbian Broadcasting System radio, where actor Orson Welles continues to frighten the crap out of me. I knew then that in order to shake the psyche and affect the consciousness of my brethren, I would have to do it today just as they did back then. When it comes to John F. Kennedy, I feel that my theory would dare to shatter the needle concerning his death. That's both relevant and necessary given the redundant cycle our government has had we truth seekers on since Kennedy's assassination. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, many of we truth seekers would firmly proclaim I don't read fiction. Well, I must take issue with this particular state of mind, as I believe it's a conditioned thought pattern that is simply thinly veiled semantics. The word theory, by definition, is a supposition or a system of ideas intended to explain something, especially one based on general principles independent of the thing to be, i.e. the convoluted conundrum of the John F. Kennedy assassination. So if you read anything on the JFK assassination, you're reading what you refer to as fiction, because every author approaches the assassination of President John F. Kennedy from a theoretical perspective.
Right. And so what you're stating is that simply having that knowledge and that awareness does help you evolve within yourself. Is that what you're saying?
Very much so.
Okay. And I completely agree with that. And that is part of the work that I do. And that's why you being a guest on my show in this topic is very relevant to Journey for Truth, because the more knowledge that we have, the more awareness that we gain, it allows us to expand our own level of consciousness. We can't separate. We can't say, well, I just want to know more about this topic, but nothing about that over there, and expect to raise our level of consciousness overall. There needs to be a willingness to search and to ask questions and to research and to be open and to really allow our minds to learn. That is how we're going to raise our consciousness, and that is connected to the work that I do and to Journey for Truth. So this leads me to my next question, more about what you read about President Kennedy. Is there more that we can do to, well, I guess fight with this agenda is one way to put it, but I guess we'll just leave it there, to fight this agenda.
Is there more that we can do to fight the agenda? Again, I have to fall back on my earlier statement. What I said, I'm extremely pessimistic when it comes down to the trajectory of the human race, and especially in a society where we're all controlled by specific means, whether it deals with control based in a religious sects, or based in or based in certain things that are related to religious texts, whereas in greed or fear. These things are used to perpetuate this ruse or perpetuate this control, and we fall for it hook, line, and sinker because we are pretty much born. We're born to fall for it. The ones that speak truth to power are what I call that falls into the category of being a natural-born leader. Even though you're in a world of followers, you are natural-born leaders, so we're the ones that stand out amongst the fray. But yet and still, we also still have no control because this society was set up so ingeniously that we're just meant to go down along with everyone else whenever the person that actually controls our world and our the human race as well as our country pushes that button. We are controlled one way or the other.
Right, exactly. And the more that we know how things work and what's really going on behind that curtain, as you stated, then we know how we are controlled, manipulated through the use of fear, through the use of the economic system, through the use of religion for some folks, through many different manners, and how we are really programmed, for lack of a better word, to stay in a state of fear. Because when you do remain in a state of fear, in a state of denial, in a state of anger, judgmental anger, then that does prevent you from really raising your own level of consciousness as well. So the more that we say, it doesn't affect me, I'm not a part of it, that was a long time ago, all of that is a sense of denial, because we are a part of it. Our history is a part of it, and it is something that we need to learn about. So, with President Kennedy greenlighting humanity's journey to the moon, we'll jump to that piece. A lot of people say that it didn't happen. What is your thought on that?
About our journey to the moon?
Yeah.
Oh, what is it? When he greenlighted our journey to the moon, he pretty much went against what you call a universal a universal treaty, if you will. Basically he has inside knowledge, as all presidents do. He has inside knowledge of an extraterrestrial existence. But the treaty was meant for humanity never to go beyond our hemisphere, never to branch into space. That was part of that treaty. We were not meant to go beyond this planet. But what President Kennedy, which I admire him for, is he broke the mold. He decided to show these He decided to show these species, which are plenty or which are many. He decided to show these species that humanity is capable of going beyond the stars, of going into the heavens. That's why the farce between the Soviets and the America's space race to get to the moon was just that. It was nothing but a farce. The Soviets were really trying to get to the moon, so they did everything they could to get to the moon. America knew good and well it was virtually impossible to get to the moon, but getting into space was a more achievable goal, just going beyond the stars, going beyond what we call the heavens, to get into space. And that's exactly what they did. That's why the first of the moon landings was nothing but a studio event. And many people are on one side or the other. It was just so alluring in that day when they televised the whole space and the moon, the trip to the moon, the whole spiel. All of that was sucked in by we the people because of the dramatic production that was put on, just like you would put on a major motion picture, which is also too dramatic. But we did not get to the moon in the first place. But it was ultimately John F. Kennedy's thumb in the nose of these species, these extraterrestrial species, to say that humanity is not supposed to do something, and he decided to do it. And that's why he made the statement that we choose to go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard, quote unquote.
Yep, and I've heard both sides of that as well from different people. So what is your personal opinion on extraterrestrial existence?
Well, I've had my own experience, so I believe wholeheartedly in the existence of these species. It's based on an experience that I had, which I have never gone into detail with. At the time, I did write it down, but I've yet to use it. But I do know that these species exist, not knowing, but my lack of memory, not knowing if I was abducted or not. Only thing I do know is what I saw, what transpired, and what happened after the fact, which I would rather not go into detail about, without sounding like a loon, because of course, what we alluded to about the controlling our society, we're pretty much shunned when we go against the societal norms. And as an author, I'd rather not get shunned. I hope you understand what I'm saying there. But I believe they do exist. They've existed for since the beginning of time, and they've been shaping and molding our societies and the human race since the beginning of time. And most people look at authors like myself as being some kind of complex individual, whereas writers such as myself have been out there since the beginning of time. They use cave drawings to write. I use a typewriter and a computer. They use cave drawings as well as sculptures to detail what they were seeing of the world. I use a pen and paper to dictate what to shine light on what I see in the world. It's no difference. They were writers then and they're writers now. And we're just writing about what we're seeing in every day, or what we're experiencing and seeing in today. They were doing the same thing. And they wrote about this in many different occasions.
Yes, I have always been taught that there are the extraterrestrials who choose to assist the Earth in a very positive way, and then there are extraterrestrials who have a more, a very much of a different plan. It's more along the lines of taking information from our own emotional bodies, and that is what leads to abductions. And I do agree with you when you stated earlier in the show that there are several or many different species of aliens. I can't say that I have ever seen a UFO or that I have had personal contact with an extraterrestrial, but I have spoken with many different individuals, and I have personal friends who have had that type of experience. So I understand your reluctance to go into great detail around your personal experience. So what is it, actually, before I get into that question, let me back up for a second. After Kennedy's assassination, it seems like, if we look at the history of our presidents, it seems like the rest of them were very easily bought and sold. So, in that, as you stated at the beginning of the show, that Kennedy really wanted to be that one that was different and really create that change, which he did. So what do you think happened after that?
After they created that change, actually, basically, it gave we the people more awareness of the powers that actually truly ran our country. It actually shined a light into how much less control we once thought we had over ourselves and the trajectory of our country. It shined a broad light to the point where I have a theory that Kennedy was a martyr. He put himself up to be a martyr. So that's why, in a sense, he did not fear death. He was dying anyway. He had more ailments. For a young man, such a young man, he had more ailments than you could shake a stick at. He was dying anyway, but no one would allude to that. The Kennedy family won't allude to that fact that he was dying. So him being a martyr was pretty much suited. But basically, it shined a light on the evils taking place, because in our country, and again, I'm going to lean on the concept of being very extremely pessimistic when it comes down to the trajectory of the human race as well as our nation. Democracy is by definition, is a country ran of the people, by the people, and for the people. When in actuality, this country is not a democracy. It's a bureaucracy, and a bureaucracy, by definition, is a country ran by the unelected. There are people behind these well-paid stooges that we supposedly vote into office that truly control the trajectory of our country. Therefore, when we focus on a president or a congressman or a senator, we're not really talking, or we're not focused on the right individual. There are people behind the shroud that actually controls the trajectory of our country, but we just have someone in place that we can target when things don't go the way we hope they would go or think that they would go. That's why presidents are selected, not elected.
I agree with that. I agree that certain individuals are placed in the Oval Office, and that, once that president takes his seat, he's really not running the show. He essentially becomes that puppet, and that there are the unseen individuals really running the show. And it's very unfortunate, but it's true, and that's the way it's been for a very long time.
Yes, and I just say that the one who stood or stands behind the desk of behind that presidential desk of any given time, undoubtedly cloaked in immense power. They know themselves to be dominant, at least initially. not only by taking a seat behind the Theodore Roosevelt, Hoover, Resolute, Johnson, Wilson, and or the C&O desk, but by having gained a following and an allegiance of Americans and peoples of the world, who collectively, by the way, sweep them into office, an office that the American people, as well as the peoples of the world, believe to be a high and noble office. This collective thrusting of this individual is based solely on the lofty words spoken by the candidate. A candidate who knows absolutely, and I mean absolutely nothing of the truth that is the presidency.
So what is it that you would like the listeners to take away from today's show?
I would like you guys to realize that focusing for over 50 years on the who, what, when, where, and how, the trajectory of the bullet, where did it come from, magic bullet, all this stuff that our military-industrial complex has filtered into your mind, which is also an offshoot of MK Ultra. It's a form of mind control that many of us some don't believe, and don't believe it's happening to them. But you can just run psychological experiments on the mind, and we'll actually, if we're looking at something, we might not see all of the details in one thing that we're looking at. This is all a part of mind control. They don't want you to focus on anything else, so they strategically put millions of our tax dollars behind controlling us within every second, within every minute of each hour, day, week, and month. This is an ongoing objective and a mission for the individuals that actually man over us and control us on every breath that we take. I want you to think outside the box, break away from the matrix, and join me down here in Zion. It sounds crazy, but I'm just asking you to focus more on not how it happened, but why it happened. And just don't dismiss my relevant theory. It's important that you not dismiss my relevant theory, primarily because it's meant to stimulate you. That's why I write what you call thought-provoking projects, which are fact-based. So I actually, again, please never dismiss the probabilities and possibilities in my body of work, even for a second.
And where can
I've been alone.
And where can people find your books?
You can go, I use a one-stop shop, which is my website. You can find out everything about my work on www.thewriterofbooks.com. Again, that's www.thewriterofbooks.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, AK, for being on my show today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, listeners, for joining me here as well on Journey for Truth on webtalkradio.net. Take a few moments and visit my website, empowermentthroughhealing.org. And also, the Universal Education Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit, is offering a workshop for pregnant teens to teach bonding and nurturing in order to prevent child abuse. You can read more about the UEF at the universaleducationfoundation.com. Until next time, have a great week.